My name is Katherine Gallo. I am 19. I am a college student at NYU, and in my free time I like to make costumes both for fan conventions and for a volunteer program that I run called Storybook Sisters Long Island. I first started costume design and construction in sophomore year of high school, and the first costume I ever made was a thrown together Bellatrix Lestrange costume from Harry Potter for a very intense Halloween party that I was throwing. And it was so much fun and I loved it so much, and everyone else was like, oh cool, Halloween's over, we can stop doing that. And I was like, no. So the following year I made my first costumes for Comic-Con. The time it takes to make each costume I feel like varies a lot depending on obviously the complexity, but also just like my schedule because I am a student. So when I was in high school and I was at home and I didn't have that much homework, I feel like it took me about average maybe 3 months to make each costume, working on it as much as I could. Now that my schedule's a little bit more erratic, I feel like I usually spend like 4 or 5 months. The most time I've ever spent on a costume was my Padme Amidala costume from Star Wars, and a large majority of that costume was hand embroidered, so that took me I think upwards of 150 hours. When it comes to the future for me, I am studying acting, so the big dream for me is of course just being able to support myself through acting. I always say whether it's a dog food commercial or Broadway, if I'm paying my bills with acting then I consider that a win. But I've also tried my hand at costume designing different shows, and that was really fun. And there's a wonderful business on the internet of commissioning costumes that I would love to get into once I feel like my skills are refined enough. So yeah, I think all of the things I'm doing right now are things that I hope to continue, but I'm just not quite sure how they're going to manifest. The inspiration for starting Storybook Sisters was I saw a Facebook video of a bunch of college students who in their free time would go and sing to children in children's hospitals. And being a theater kid, I immediately thought, oh, how cool would it be if instead of just singing, we were able to bring those characters to those kids. And through research, I found out that that's actually a thing that is done all throughout the country. Different companies, different programs, different organizations bringing characters to kids who were having a rough time. And I realized that on Long Island there wasn't any representation like that. So my friend Kira and I decided to try to start one. And it was a crazy process because we started it when we were in high school. We had no idea how hospitals worked. We had no idea who we needed to speak to. But through many emails and many interviews, we ended up visiting our local Ronald McDonald House, and that reference from them allowed us to visit more hospitals from there. With Storybook Sisters, I think the hardest thing is the fact that you have to remember that you're there to bring a moment of joy to those families, because even if it's, we visit some rooms and we're greeted by a 19-year-old boy, so obviously he doesn't think that Princess Anna has just walked into his hospital room. But you still have to act crazy and just like let him and all of the family have a moment of levity. So I think the hardest thing is walking in and seeing kids that are just really going through it and just not letting that affect you. So it's a lot of walking in, giving 100%, and then walking out and like really having to like collect yourself before the next time, because we're fortunate we get to see them in a moment where they're really happy, but putting that in perspective sometimes is really hard. I think as a student in college studying acting who is in production sometimes and is trying to costume and trying to run this program, I definitely feel like my brain is constantly going like, ah. So I feel like it's a fun mix of finding balance, but also sometimes just accepting that things have to go to the side sometimes. So when we first got into college, it was hard to accept that we were only going to be able to do hospital visits over breaks, but being able to just accept that and focus on those visits has been really helpful. And I recognize that maybe I don't need to attend all of these really small comic conventions. Maybe I just need to work on this one costume for New York Comic Con every year. So it's a give and take, but I'm also happy that I'm still finding ways to do all of it, even though sometimes it makes me crazy. When it comes to future goals for Storybook Sisters, I feel like the biggest thing is I just really want to keep it running, because as we've kept it running through different references and different events that have popped up, we've been able to get in contact with some really inspirational people. So I think the longer it goes, the more people we're going to be able to the more we're going to be able to join this network of people who are all fighting for these kids. And I think, along with wanting to add more characters, obviously we've spoken about adding maybe some Star Wars characters or Marvel, because as much as we do believe that princesses can be loved by everyone, we do appeal to a very specific demographic. So I think widening the kids that we appeal to and just continuing to network and keep it going. If you would like to learn any more or keep up with the volunteer program I've been speaking about so very much, you can find us on Instagram at StorybookSistersLI and on Facebook under the same name. Thank you.